Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Weighing In, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Joined, as almost always, by both Mark Ostrander and Grant Turner. Great to be with you guys. Appreciate you doing this a day later than we normally do, accommodating my travel schedule. One of the busiest weeks of the year, especially in the folk style season. Cliff Keen, Las Vegas happened. I think there's a lot to talk about there. First of all, good afternoon, boys. How are we?
Doing good. It's cold as all get here in Iowa.
Yeah, I came back from 70 degrees to 30 degrees, and that wasn't great. So I'm imagining it's colder up there. So let's just start with the rankings. And then I think that'll be reflected. I've also got the brackets pulled up here. So let me do this. We'll share screen. Okay, so first of all, guys, if you are not using Matt Kings, go get an account. If you are a watcher from previous years, this is the old fantasygrade.com. And Mark, we still need to get the grades in year right. But other than that, I think we're pretty good. Yep. And it's a great website. We're combining basically the rankings from everybody. Mark, I was having flashbacks to after Cliff Keen, like what our Sunday night would have been a year ago, 2 years ago doing this. So we should take the time to thank the rankers at these sites for doing work, because it's hard to do. So, well, we can just start with 125. Pretty interesting. Ramos moves to 1. Spratley moves to 2. Figueroa drops to 3. Ventresca moves from 8 to 4. Caleb Smith drops from 2 to 5. Cooper Flynn moves from 12 to 7. The other thing I guess that is interesting for us to talk about is our picks. So 125, Mark had Spratley over Ramos. GT had Caleb over Volk. Can't really be punished for no Volk. I had Ramos over Vincent Robinson. Vincent Robinson didn't wrestle after the quarters and would have wrestled Ramos. So, I don't think I'm accountable for Robinson. He doesn't lose for Volk. Caleb Smith was right in the mix. I had Ramos as the champ. Mark had Spratley and Ramos. So I guess overall, probably, Mark, you were the closest to being right here. What were your thoughts on, Mark, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on 125, either CKLV or just the weight class in general?
Well, I think you're noticing that I think Ramos looks a lot bigger and stronger this year. He's more physical, and he's scoring a lot more points than he did last year. That's something he's going to have to continue to do to stay there at number 1, because there's some really good kids. Obviously, last year's, and I've always been impressed with Spratley. I think he's going to keep improving, especially in that wrestling room with the guys he gets to work out with. But probably more than anything is Eddie Ventresca actually looks like the Eddie of old and not the Eddie of last year. So there's a lot more consistency in the way he's wrestling this year than in the past year. So I don't know if it's a weight cut. I don't think it's competition, because all these guys were there last year. And
he was banged up last year, Marco. I think that came out after the year was over, that he was pretty banged up. And so I think we saw a healthy Eddie V and then a banged up Eddie V, and now we got him back healthy again, right? I mean, it kind of, if that's true, it makes a lot of sense, right?
Yep. But that's
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please keep going. I apologize. Go ahead.
No, really, that's kind of my takeaways. Joey Volk's lost a couple matches this year. Cooper Flynn has looked good early. Hasn't had a lot of great competition yet, but has looked good early. Beat South Dakota State. He's dropped, obviously, a little bit. And McCronin, he looks about the same as he did last year. He's going to beat a lot of guys. I still think he has some steps to make. And I think Vince Robinson, I think he's good enough to be an All-American. I think he's good enough to be up in that 4, 5, 6 category. And if he stays healthy, I think he will be.
Yeah, he's kind of the wild card. So very quickly, Ramos over Ventresca 7-4. Spratley over Caleb Smith 2-0 for third. McCrone over Renneria by fall for fifth. Tanner Jordan over Milani from Cornell for seventh. GT, what'd you think about 25? We should also add in here, then I'll get out of your way, GT. Lillidow beat Sheldon Seymour at the duel Sunday, which really isn't a surprise, but it was an upset ranking-wise just because Lillidow didn't have enough results yet to really constitute a ranking, but he moves up in these rankings as well. So go ahead, Grant. I apologize.
No, it's all good. I mean, once again, I think the trouble with doing some of the picks before we kind of see the seeds of the field is that, like, you know, you don't know what matchups you're going to really get to see. And, you know, we kind of see when the seeds come out, when they actually know that, like, who's coming and who's not. You know, I think we all pretty much are pretty high on Spratley and, you know, his growth and his opportunity this year. You know, and then once again, having a really good, you know, coaching staff that's new for him to work with. You know, I think Mark hit it on the head. I'm very excited to see what Ventresca, you know, being healthy looks like. And then I think, you know, from the standpoint of, like, we kind of understand what we get with Matt Ramos. Matt Ramos is probably, I don't want to call him streaky, but, like, I just never feel like I know what I'm going to get with him, other than, like, he does give 110% effort in all of his matches. I just don't know if he's going to win or not. Like, he goes hard. So
He definitely goes hard, yeah.
So I think I dare say it again, 125 could be 125 of last year all over again if these guys continue to, like, you know, like ping pong around a little bit.
The other part of this that is my fault for not mentioning, Richie Figs didn't wrestle at CKLV, and so that changes, you know, the general consensus of the rankers was they drop him. And so Wynn dropped him out of the rankings completely, which I don't know how you can justify that, but he was two. Internet has it Ramos, Figs, Spratley, and Flo has it Ramos, Spratley, Figs. It'd be interesting to see if Figs has kind of the year he did last year, guys, where, you know, didn't have the best regular season, but, you know, he's a money guy come March. I mean, he's definitely a guy you wouldn't bet against. And we see also Luke Lillidow moving his way up the rankings. He went from 21 to 12. He obviously started the year off the board. And GT, Mark and I always, like, we'll pick our fantasy team that in November, and then obviously it costs way too much come January or February or March because of the actual movement. But, like, Lillidow was the absolute no-brainer at 25 that you could get for, like, you know, literally nothing. So he keeps moving his way up the rankings. Okay, 133. Let me pull up the results. So the story of CKLV is Seth Romney. He beats Evan Frost in the final 7-3. Buzakis beats Whitcraft in overtime 13-10. Tyler Knox beats Jacob Van D 5-0. Derek Cardinal beats Dylan Ragusin 12-5. Mark correctly called, I don't know if it was on the air, but if it wasn't on the air, I will vouch for this. He correctly called that Jacob Van D would beat Dylan Ragusin. And there was an absolute bonkers match where Evan Frost was down 10-1, came all the way back and pinned Klebo from Arizona State in basically a tilt position with 1 second left. I don't think he was pinned, but I actually talked to the Arizona State staff, and they're like, it doesn't really matter. You just can't get there with 1 second left. So GT, you know, we'll just flip-flop. Thoughts on 133. Oh, the other thing is Nagao is officially out for the year. So, and Braden Davis lost a close one, 4-2. I didn't get to watch that match with traveling, but I believe it was 1 takedown to none to Crookham. So what are your thoughts on what you saw at 33?
So I think it was you know, like when we were talking about like you get somebody that you now are going to pay attention to, and Seth Romney is definitely that person for the rest of the year. I think he is going to be somebody that everyone is going to look to from his results on this particular event, with all of these studs in this bracket, to like, you know, he's going to be a guy that he can be a bracket buster for everything. You know, once again, I think that we all know like what type of an athlete Bouzakis is. You know, world team member. You know, extremely talented. You know, he beats him. You know, then he beats Van D, and then he makes it to the finals and beats Evan Frost, who I think we all kind of maybe underappreciated last year with him in his run to being an All-American. What a performance by Cal Poly and Zeth. So, I mean, tip of the cap to that, just because there were so many guys that we thought and were really high on. I think that I'm still extremely high on Tyler Knox with his match against Frost as well. But I think it's a great, I think, deep weight class with a couple of new freshman type guys in it, or like newcomers. I should say newcomers, right?
Yeah.
Because Ayala is new to 33. You know, Knox is new. Braden Davis is new. So this is a very interesting weight for me nationally. But I thought CKLV for this weight class, it was probably one of the most shocking ones with kind of who's already been proven and who lost to who and where everybody ended up winding up at. Because we all know how good Dylan Ragnarsson is. And,
Right.
And Ragnarsson got 8th.
Yeah. Well, the other thing about that is, I mean, Frost makes the finals, and he should have lost in the quarters.
Right.
Like if Klebo doesn't melt down, and I mean Frost might take 3rd, but he definitely doesn't make the finals. So I was Russell statting Mark Romney. He's 9-1 this year.
Okay.
You want to guess who he lost to?
Tyler Knox.
Yes, Tyler Knox in the duel, 5-3. Great guess. He's also beaten Cade Moore, Angelo Rini, Braxton Brown, Derek Cardinal, and then Frost, Bouzakis, and Van D. So he's got a pretty salty resume. And I mean, I'll turn it over to you. What do you think about 33?
Yeah, I mean, Jesus. This to me is 25, almost like 125 last year, with the exception that Crookham and Bird look really, really good. Nazir Bailey, I have not seen wrestle much. I know, so I know he's athletic. I know he's talented. But I think after that, it could be just an absolute chaos. Everybody beats everybody. So that's why it reminds me of last year's 125. Crookham is going to be hard to beat. I think Lucas Bird is right where he should be. I think he's the second best kid in the country at that weight. He's strong. He's been through it. He's a veteran. Nazir, Drake Ayala. Drake's looking better. You know, he had a hiccup against Knox, but Knox, you know, showed a lot of people, if you get on Drake, he's not as hard to finish on as some of the other guys, and is not a great scrambler yet. So that's a gift. You got to be able to scramble. But Ragnarsson dropping from 4th all the way to 12th seems a little bit one-sided because he had a bad weekend. I mean, that's quite a drop.
It's always, that was like the ranking. Sorry to interrupt, but that's like the rankings nightmare, right? Like the one that reminded me the most was Adam Kuhn. I think freshman or sophomore year was undefeated and then went 0-2 at the Big Tens. And you're like, what do we do with this? You know, like what do we do with this? You know, it's like, it's just nuts. Like, I mean, it's 3.5 months of work versus the one weekend that matters.
Yep.
And you know,
I expect Ferguson to be an All-American. I think he's going to be up there in that middle tier come the end of the year. So I'm not worried about it. But you got guys like Penn State at 133. loses a close match to Crookham 4-2, one takedown to none. They both get escapes. He gets an escape after he gets taken down, but he moves up in the rankings. So
he moved up a spot, but yeah.
But that kind of surprises me. He moved up a spot when other guys are, aren't losing. And that's where we always had our problems when we did our rankings, David. And we'd talk about each guy and, what we thought and why we thought they should be where.
Well, the problem is this. He lost to Derek Cardinal, who's ranked 28th. And so you don't drop Ragusin below him, but he lost to him.
Yeah.
12-5. So
bad weekend.
Not arguing. Like, I agree. It was a bad
But where do we stop doing the body of work because he's done this for 3 years and we do it one weekend?
Again, I think that's interesting, right? Because the years past are not supposed to, like, they don't count towards seeding, but they count for everything in rankings. Like, if Grant's the returning national champion, he starts number 1.
Yep.
And we saw this in football this weekend with the selection of the final 12, the CFP bracket, or whatever the right way to say it is. I'll tell you what, people in Arizona are very happy about Arizona State being 4th and getting a bye and all that. So they did our Cyclones dirty, GT. But anyway, the statement I always said, and it doesn't really say anything definitively, but the further your stuff is in the rearview mirror, the less it counts. And I think that's just a fact. So
yeah.
Okay, 41. Mendez beats Tegan Jamison 5-2. Brock Hardy beat Coderhant by fall. Coderhant had a great tournament for 3rd and 4th. Jacob Frost medical forfeit over Sam Latona. So Jacob Frost might be the guy at 141. Like, I feel really bad for Iowa State. Like, their whole lineup is kind of collapsing. Sergio Lemley over Cale Happel medical forfeit for 7th. So the rankings, the graphics doing something different here. I can't even see you guys, so I'm not going to change it. But Tegan Jamison moves from 8 to 4. Lemley moves from 7 to 10. Latona moves from 17 to 14. So, I mean, I'll go first here, guys. It's pretty chalky besides Jamison. And Jamison's part of that Oklahoma State story, right? Like, everybody placed, 10 placers, all in the top 5, 9 in the top 4. If you're a Cowboy fan, this is what you've been hoping for. Now, what people will forget, just for the sake of context, Oklahoma State had a really, really good regular season last year. Now, they didn't win CKLV. They were undefeated in duels. They lost to Iowa the last duel of the year. Didn't have a great Big 12. Didn't have a great NCAA. But it feels different this year. And a lot of it has to do with those portal guys. The other thing is this. I did validate Teague Travis is going to medical redshirt. He hurt his knee. Caleb Fish is going to be the guy at 57. And I think, Mark, it's your turn to go first here. Nice to have that kind of depth in the room, right? Like, Caleb Fish plugs right in.
Yeah, and, he lost an early round match that you would not expect him to lose. I would have said he would have beat that guy with very little difficulty. And then he comes all the way back through the back door and beats everybody pretty much. So, it was impressive, the run he was able to make. Oklahoma State, and we had talked about this earlier in the podcast, with that coaching staff and the talent that they have in the room, and they've always had a lot of talent. But with this coaching staff, they're doing some things that obviously they haven't done in the past. There's times they look really good, and that's just because they were better than everybody else. But I think you're going to see these guys peaking when they need to peak, like they did this past weekend. I think that's something that David Taylor and the coaching staff understands is very important, because David had to do it with, world and Olympic, his whole life.
We're going to see, though, right? Because every coaching staff has guys that were good, and everybody talks about peaking and training cycles. But they passed the first test, right, Grant?
Yes.
Like, they passed the first test, they win CKLV, and they win it by like 77 points or something. So pretty impressive, right, GT?
Well, I think, yes, huge congratulations to winning the tournament. But I think also to Mark's, and once again, I think I side on the coaching side of things. It's just one weekend, right? Like, this is early in the season. It's a great test. You go up against some names, or you go up against some people that like you wrestle against that are already kind of proven winners, but it's just one weekend. Like, some guys are banged up a lot. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, and a lot of the teams are banged up. A lot of, like, Iowa State's guys are hurt. Cale Happel got hurt. You know, like, there's tons of guys that basically come out of that meat grinder of a tournament, and you're like, oh boy, like, you know, we got to regroup here a little bit, get healthy, and then attack the second half of the season. But not to take anything away, because they do keep score.
Yeah.
So,
and they got the most points by a lot.
Yeah. And they got the most points by a lot. So, I mean, but it's a great way to, if you're the staff of Oklahoma State, putting kind of your philosophy into, you know, the kids, you know, they have some success. And as a team, they had tremendous amount of success at almost every single weight class. So they can always point to good matches and good results for each person, even if they didn't all win the tournament. So, yeah.
I think what's interesting is, I don't think you said this intentionally, but maybe you did, but it's one weekend. It's the same argument for Dylan Ragusin as it is for Oklahoma State, right? Like, perspective, right? Like, and that's what Mark's saying about, I mean, he's here, so I don't speak for him, but like, hey, Dylan Ragusin's been really good for a long time. You know, as GT would say, he's a dog. You know, I mean, he pushed Dayton to the absolute brink at NCAAs last year. And Mark, you yourself said, I expect him to place. The kid's a winner. He's going to figure out how to get it done when he needs to. So conversely, it's also interesting too, like, we've all coached good teams, and I can say I've coached some bad teams. I'm not going to say you guys have, but, you know, like, momentum's a real thing. And a couple of those Oklahoma State guys might have got swept up a little bit in the momentum. I'm not saying they didn't deserve to win every match, but they won a lot of coin flips, and that's what it takes to win tournaments. You got to win the coin flips. So, I mean, congratulations to them, taking nothing away. It's good perspective from Grant and Mark, and sort of the opposite directions, which is interesting. Okay.
I guess one thing I wanted to say, because I agree with what Grant said, this is one weekend, and I look at it as one weekend, but to have all 10 of your starters that you have out there performing at that level and competing at the level that they did, not just 8 of them, not 7 of them, like most teams are going to do. They had everybody place. That's hard to do. That's hard to get a whole team prepared for that kind of a weekend with that schedule of the talent that was at the tournament.
And shout out to Jimmy. Well, actually, probably Caldwell and Gilman, especially with Jimmy being with David Taylor at the Grant Turner Open, otherwise known as the non-Olympic World Championships. But being out there with him, these other guys not just holding the fort down, but clearly keeping these guys developing.
Yep.
You know, that team didn't go backwards while he was gone. And that's what you want if you're a head coach, right? You guys are, Mark, you've been a head coach. GT and I have been assistant coaches, and respect the hell out of our head coaches. And you were an assistant coach as well. You want to build a great staff so that if you're gone for a little bit, the place doesn't fall apart. Okay, 49. Caleb Henson beats Ridge Lovett, 6-3 in overtime, got both takedowns. Jaden Abbas beat Echemendia by fall. I did not see that match. Carter Young beats Alvarez, battle of former teammates 4-1. Colin Riabuto beats Ethan Fernandez 8-3. I don't think this is going to happen because he's hurt. I don't know what's going to happen when he comes back. I'm going to say this, whether it's Echemendia or Echemendia, I think he might be the best guy in the country on his feet at 41-9. I'm not sure he's in the best guy on his feet at 41. I just don't know how he looks. But if you didn't see the Lovett match, he took him down, let him go. Somewhere there was a neutral choice. Somewhere there was a down choice. It was 3-2. Echemendia gets a second takedown, and he's trying to let him go. And Lovett reaches back and grabs his leg in reverse like a freaking third grader and picks it up and steps to and Turks him and puts him on his back for 7. That was the match. Or 6, 2 and 4, excuse me, 6. That's the match. But we saw this with Echemendia and Parco. He got the only takedown. I'm sure the guys at Iowa State are a lot smarter than me, but I would spend a lot of time with him on learning how to release guys and like just drop to an ankle and then just let the guy go at 4, but just get away from him. But best guy in the country on his feet, I think, at 49. And then maybe Van Ness rolls him. I don't know. Van Ness looks super special this year. Okay, and we'll see if he comes back. I mean, that whole lineup at Iowa State could have been unbelievably good, and not sure what's going to happen now. GT, your thoughts on 49?
Well, I think we both kind of, when we started doing our picks, we all knew that like Henson and Lovett were kind of I would say more along the lines of kind of the clear favorites, I would say, with the Etchemandia, like, oh, he's going to have an opportunity up a weight class to see like kind of where he's at. But I think the story for me personally is like the bottom half of the bracket with like Carter Young placing, Sammy Alvarez basically making it his new home at Ryder, Rebuto basically getting on the stand, and Fernandez getting on the stand. Because I think if we look at the top 4, Henson, Lovett, Abbas, Etchemandia, I think we all would have basically thought those guys would place. I think that there was a lot of other matches that happened later between like that bottom half of the results that were like, that's really, that's how that turned out. So I'm just, I think for the finals, we got the showcase that we wanted. We got Ridge Lovett versus Caleb Henson, and that very well could be a preview of the national finals.
Yeah, and GT, you mentioned something. So picks at 33, Mark had Frost over Knox. GT had Frost over Knox. I had Ragusin over Frost. So none of us had it exactly right. None of us, our crystal ball, had Romney, but you guys were way closer than I was. 41, we had Mendez over Hardy, Mark and I. GT had Mendez over Happel. So none of us had it exactly right. 49, GT was the only guy smart enough to pick the national champion to win it. He had Henson over Waters, who didn't wrestle. I had Lovett over Etchemendia, which was correct, but in semifinal. And then Mark had Lovett over Henson, so I had it flip-flop. Mark, thoughts on 49?
Yeah, I'm not giving Henson enough credit. I think I don't know why, because he is a dog. He looked really good. He's physical. He's got such a great pace. Reminds me a little bit about kind of the way Messenbrink wrestles, just keeps coming at you and at you and at you and at you. And 7 minutes of that, you just don't want him around you. So you don't want to be there. So,
I think you didn't pick him because, or give him credit, he lost to Jackson Arrington, right? He loses in the conference tournament like that. You don't think he's going to win nationals. And his final against Gomez was so weird because like Gomez just threw himself to his back like once or twice.
No.
And I'm not saying he didn't earn the national title, but if you've ever wrestled, you're like, that's the match I want in the finals. The other guy goes for broke with a low percentage move when it's 0-0 and you get a 6 or 7 point lead.
But I mean, two takedowns to none on Rich Lovett. That's pretty impressive. So you got to give him kudos. Besides that, I thought the weight kind of wrestled the way I thought it might, except for Stanford. I didn't think Abbas would place as high as he did because he has been beaten a few times and not that close. He's been worked. So to come back and have that kind of a tournament was impressive.
Yep. Carter Young moves from 24 to 13. Alvarez 26 to 18. Cross Wazalewski lost over the weekend. He drops from 13 to 22. I actually had that duel Friday night with Rock Harrison. He lost to UVA. All right, 57. So, again, this is a bonkers weight. Antrell Taylor beats Ryder Downey 4-3. I like Antrell Taylor, but you got to watch that match. I don't know how they lost the challenge because for sure I think it's wrong. Caleb Fish takes third over medical forfeit over Patty Gallagher. All medical forfeits for third, fifth, and seventh. Fish over Gallagher, Jared Hill over Joey Blaze, Pinheiro over Hippolito. Our picks, I had Pinheiro over Taylor. Mark had Taylor over Pinheiro. And GT had Keller over Downey. So these are the picks guaranteed to be wrong. Keller didn't place or didn't wrestle. Do we know?
Oh, he wrestled.
So he just DNP'd.
Yeah, he did not place.
Okay. All right.
Not have a good weekend, David.
Keller dropped from 5 to 10. Gallagher
Just one weekend. Just one weekend. We talked about this. Don't get too excited. He's very talented. Just had a bad weekend.
Gallagher goes. We're gonna have to pick it up a little bit because we got to get the weight classes and teams. Gallagher goes from 11 to 7. Ethan Miller 12 to 8. Blaze from 15 to 9. I will just say this: I think this weight class. The problem here is you don't know who to pick. Ja'Cory, you don't know if he's going to come back, and if so, if he's going to ever be 100%. Meyer Shapiro, the rumor is concussions. Concussions and hamstrings are pretty bad things to get around. It's not like a broken finger where you can tape it to another one and wrestle. These are these are serious injuries. So, I mean, and Kasak is the number 3 guy behind those two, and he lost to wrestle off. So this might be 125 this year. Because I think Downey really beat Antrell Taylor. Mark Manning, don't get mad at me. I'm sorry. But if you watch that match, I'm just.
Oh, that was 2. There was near fall points there.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't know who doesn't give to. That's the problem. And
I don't know how they lost the challenge. I don't even know what happened there. Okay, 65. Peyton Hall beats Cam Amin in overtime. Barraclaw loses early and does the gangster comeback, takes 3rd over Bubba Wilson. Drake Rhodes from South Dakota State beats Garvin for 5th. Bronk Mananona beats Mosher from Hofstra, which is probably the most surprising placer of anybody. Seth Romney, most surprising champ. So top 5 say the same. Cam Amin jumps from 10 to 6. I think that's right that he's behind Barraclaw because he did lose to him head-to-head, even though he placed 1 spot ahead of him. Hunter Garvin drops a spot. Bubba Wilson moves way up. Andrew Sparks moves up a few spots. So kind of the story here, I think, is Sammy Sasso. He lost twice, DNP'd. Mark, this is exactly what you thought. Like, he's got to get healthy. He doesn't look right yet.
Yeah, and kudos for him to be out there competing. His teammates look up to him.
Mendez talked about it, yeah.
He talked about he went in and started wrestling about 3 months after the shooting. He could barely had to walk with the cane, but he felt better wrestling than he did walking. So, it's going to take time. I don't know if he has enough time to get to where you're going to talk about being on a podium at the Nationals. I hope he's there because of everything he's been through. He's a soldier. He's one heck of a wrestler when he's healthy. So it'd be fun to see that. I thought he'd go down to 57. We had talked about that. I thought it'd be perfect. But then when he was interviewed, the doctors don't want him cutting weight. It's not good for his spine. So that was part of the injury, I'm sure.
And Gallagher's wrestling well. Patty Gallagher's wrestling well.
He is, so, yeah.
Marco, or GT rather, I mean, you're actively coaching. If you have a guy like Sammy Sasso on your team that's galvanizing, that's inspirational, it makes coaching a little bit easier, right?
Yeah, I think, once again, we all, I mean, if we don't truly understand what happened to Sammy Sasso and what he's going through with his physical therapy or rehab, man's wrestling Division I after being, gone through a traumatic experience. I think that we all want what's best for him athletically. I think we all want what's best for him in his life, but you just kind of know he's still working through it, right? You can see it because maybe he's a half step slower here, but he's making progress, right? So, and I think also just when you have somebody that is in the room every day and you can see what he's doing to get back to where he wants to be, that's inspirational for sure. So you got somebody like that on your team, you can pull from that energy.
Yeah. I think he's going to be fine by the end of the year. I don't know if he'll be 100%, but I think he's going to be pretty good. And his 80 or 90% is better than a lot of guys. I will absolutely say I'm rooting for him. And you're not, we're Switzerland, we're not supposed to, but that's a story you kind of got to root for. So, All right, 174. DJ Hamidi beats Lorenzo Norman on a ride out on the third period, like clutch. It was 3-3, and he was down like 40 seconds of riding time and rode him out. Garrett Thompson, Ohio, beat Simon Ruiz. That was fairly shocking for third. Casella from Binghamton over Wask from Navy. So a lot of the non-traditional powers here. Sima, Northern Iowa, over DeVos, who had a bad tournament for him for seventh. So the rankings shake out. Cade DeVos drops from 3 to 9. Garrett Thompson moves up from 18 to 10. Karchla goes from 7 to 12. Sima moves up. And Lorenzo Norman moves up. GT, how close are we thinking DJ Hamidi or Hamidi is to Levi Haynes and Keegan O'Toole?
I have no idea. I think that is. I think you're not going to see it. You're not going to see it at all. Like, you're going to see it maybe in the duel where you get to see Hamidi versus O'Toole, or you may not. You know, there could be some gamesmanship that goes on there between, like, I'm only going to give you like a one shot at this, and it might be in the Big 12 finals.
Yeah.
But I don't think for a second that Hamidi and or O'Toole want to like do any of that. I think they want to scrap it out.
For sure. Yeah.
I don't think you're going to see the inverse either. I don't think you're going to see O'Toole Haynes, and you're not going to see Hamidi Haynes at all.
O'Toole Haynes are supposed to hit at collegiate duels.
That would be interesting if that does occur, because that's your seeding criteria for basically nationals.
Yeah.
In that match. So you could see it if, once again, you're in that mindset. But I think those guys we're down to the wire. Like, we're only going to we'll see the O'Toole Hamidi at least twice, because you're going to have the duel and conference and potentially nationals if it all works out.
Yeah.
But I think that the person that's knocking on those guys' door is Lorenzo Norman.
He's an interesting story, right?
I think he's knocking at the conversation on the award stand, and maybe getting a couple of those close matches to fall his way, especially if he's at the level of where Hamidi's at now. I think he's in the conversation that, okay, see where you're at.
He's 9-1 this year, by the way. Beat Garrett Thompson, beat Wask, beat Brands. Those are his big wins, and then I lost to Hamidi. Marco, you're the wise one of the group. So this is what I said to you off air. I think we're forgetting about Hamidi killing Messenbrink for a period and a half in the Big 10 finals and getting run down. Here's the other thing I said, and we don't have to talk about this. Next week, we probably got more time. If Levi Haynes wins 3 national titles and goes undefeated and is a 4-time finalist, we are sleeping on this dude, and I'm not saying it's wrong. He might be a 3-time champ, 4-time finalist, and never be the best guy in his own team, which is absurd. Like, he's not going to be the best guy in his team this year if Scarachi wins 5. Maybe next year, but Messenbrink might have a more dominant season. Hell, Josh Barr might be killing everybody next year the way it's going, So I'm just saying. All right, go ahead. Go back to the 74, Mark. I'm sorry.
74, I think Norman's a problem. I think it's a problem for everybody. He's so lanky. He moves really, really well. He's hard to get in on. He's got heavy hips, and he's just going to be an issue for these guys. Now, whether he's an issue for Keegan and Haynes is a whole different story. But, we had talked about, Brands not looking very good early in the year, not scoring any points, doesn't have an offense. It's always been good defensively, and it was kind of a shocker that he lost, Norman. And now the way Norman's wrestling, you're saying, wait a minute, maybe Brands isn't too far from being where he needs to be. So
Norman and Knox make Ayala and Brands look better.
Yeah.
I mean, based on what they've done, yeah.
So
kind of helps out a little bit.
But Hamidi, like what Grant said, I think it's going to take a little while yet. We're not going to find out just yet how much improvement he's made, but I'm pretty sure by March, with what he's working with, who he's working with in that room, he's going to continue to get better. And he didn't place at nationals last year. I would be shocked to see him not place at nationals and not be in the top 4. So that I think there's going to be some real improvement. So
100%. Hamidi did lose to Keegan one year in the All-Star meet. It was the same year that Gomez ran down somebody in that meet. I can't remember now, but anyway. Okay. 84. Oh, by the way, for our picks, 65, Mark had Barraclaw over Hall. GT had Hall over Garvin, so he had the champ, and I had Barraclaw over Amin. 74.
Way to go, Grant.
We all had Hamidi. Mark had Norman in the finals. Good for you, Mark. GT had Wolak. I had DeVos. All right, 84.
Wolak didn't wrestle.
I'm sorry?
Wolak didn't wrestle, I don't think.
I know. I'm just telling you who you picked. I'm not saying it's your fault.
Actually, that is his fault. I had it correct, though. Hamidi over Norman, right?
Yes. Just to cut to the chase, if you count the team picks, if you cut to the exact number of picks correct, Grant had 9, I had 9, Mark had 7. But if you go to the ones that were like one off in terms of the slot, Mark had 4, GT had 1, I had 2, so it's pretty close. So anyway, all right, we both had all three of us, had Keckeisen Plot. Really went out on a limb there. Keckeisen beats Plot 8-3. Bennett Berge smokes Shoemate 18-4. Isaac Dean from Ryder is pretty dang good. Medical forfeit over Bachman. And then Robin from West Virginia over Bullock from Michigan. Isaac Dean gave Plot a really good semifinal. I haven't even looked at these rankings yet, but everything pretty much stays the same, except Robin pops in from new to 22, and Isaac Dean goes from 33 to 24. TJ Stewart dropped again from 15 to 20. So I don't think there's we had other stuff we got to get to. I don't think there's a lot of change here at this weight. I mean, they gave Berge a mulligan here. That's really what happened. I feel like McAnally has kind of slowly moved himself up to this feels like a weird weight to me, like where it's tier 1A and 1B or Srirachi and Keckeisen. Tier B is Plot by himself, I feel like. I mean, you guys obviously can feel free to disagree. And I think McAnally's kind of bumped himself to the top of tier C. Am I way off, or do you guys kind of see it the same way?
I think about that.
The only thing I can say about Plot, and, he's making progress. He's closed the gap a little bit. But closing the gap, not getting majored by, Keckeisen is one thing. But the score on Keckeisen is a completely different thing. And he's yet to come really close to doing that.
That's right.
He's getting better defensively, not giving up as many points. But we're not to where, you just don't go out and take these guys down and beat them. Not a Keckeisen, not the way he wrestles.
I feel like Luke Serber's style would be better to wrestle Keckeisen than Plot. Because Plot's really good at offense, Keckeisen's really good at offense, he's just better. Serber is good when you shoot. And I feel like that's kind of how you got to beat Keckeisen. Or be named Carter Starachi, one of the two.
Yeah.
Okay. 97, Cardenas, who looks every bit like the number one guy in the country by fall in a tilt over Evan Bates. Serber takes third by injury default over Joey Novak. Trey Munoz it must have been injury default, doesn't say here, over Andy Smith. Wyatt Volker beats Christian Carroll. Okay, so the rankings here, and no Ferrari. Okay, so in our picks, Mark had Ferrari. Cardenas over Ferrari. I had Ferrari over Cardenas. GT had Ferrari over Cardenas. So Mark got the champ right. That's fair, I guess. Okay. Rankings.
What do you mean that's fair, I guess?
Well, no, I'm just saying, the match didn't happen, but yeah. You're right.
You got to show up. That's
Yeah.
what I say. You got to show up.
The big move of the weekend is Josh Barr majors Michael Beard, moves from 22 to 6. Beard moves from 6 to 8, drops below Salazar. So the top 8 now are Buchanan, Cardenas, Ferrari, Elam, Little, Barr, Salazar, Beard, Andy Smith, Trey Munoz, Serber. Evan Bates moves up 8 spots. Zach Glazer, a DNP, so he drops a bunch of spots. Luke Stout dropped a few spots. All right, Mark, you were on Barr first. How high does he finish at Nationals?
I think I picked him at 7. And
I can look that up. Go ahead. Go ahead. Keep going. I got you.
But I think he might be higher than that. He's
You picked him at 4.
okay. That's about where I think he'd probably end up. It's about right. He's a dog, and he's smart, and he's got some of the best coaches in the country. And they interviewed him after that match, and he had said that, how do you go out and major a guy like this? And he goes, do you have any idea who I work out with every day in the room? My God, Aaron Brooks, Coach Cal,
Coach Casey,
Varner,
Kirk Fleet,
and that's not even counting the guys that he,
Kirk Fleet, Starachi,
yeah, and
Lucas Cochran.
So, I mean, what do you expect? That's what he does. I thought what he did in that match was genius, is just to wear him out in the first period. He didn't do a lot, but really heavy hand fighting, a lot of movement, and then open it up in the second period. And then the third period, he just absolutely dominated. So great underhook, throw bys, scored twice off it, and then rode him out to get the major, which was impressive.
Yeah. GT, what do we think about Serber? Like, he's moved up and down in the lineup for Oklahoma State. Some people actually thought he wasn't going to start this year with Cody Merrill. He's got the starting spot, places top 3 at CKLV. Granted, some of the top names weren't there, but, besides Cardenas, I mean, he looked really good, I thought, overall, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, once again, you can't determine who's in your bracket. So, I mean, you just go and wrestle who's in front of you, right? So, yeah. I think for the most part, other than probably the match that we maybe wanted to see against like Trey Munoz that just didn't happen.
Yeah.
He got a chance to basically wrestle Christian Carroll. That's a room versus room match, right? From where he previously was. He beats Stemmet, which I think Stemmet's pretty dang good. So I think there's a lot of like good matches that he had that, he's proven that he's, healthy and in a good spot. I think the one person, Andy Smith, tight match with him, but Serber did pretty dang good. And then outplaced Smith on the backside because once again, he was up against Munoz in that Conci semi. So
I think if you're Oklahoma State, you want to see him against Cardenas, right? Theoretically, like you want to see where you are. Yeah.
But I'm excited for him. It looks healthy. Hopefully he's healthy and in the second half of the season.
Yeah, he looked good though. Okay. Heavyweight, Wyatt Hendrickson just Hulk smashed everybody. Pins Trumbull in the finals. Trumbull smashed Colton Schultz. Colton Schultz takes third, medical forfeit over Jimmy Mullen. Maurer from Oregon State, medical forfeit over Feldman. Lance Runyon, medical forfeit over Harley Andrews. So the rankings, as a result, no change in the top 21. So it's pretty interesting. And it's, and it doesn't, I think Bastida is going to come out of the rankings because I don't know what they're going to do with them. Trumbull's moving his way up. That was like with Mark was with Barr. Trumbull was kind of my guy. So I had him picked at 4th and the highest of the 3 of us behind Kirkfleet, Bastida, and Hendrickson. And I guess if I'm being honest, if Bastida comes out, I probably got to pick him 3rd, but probably there's a huge gap between him and Hendrickson. Like Hendrickson just manhandled him. Hendrickson feels like he's going to take 3rd again and just kill everybody except for Kirkfleet and Gable. GT, is that kind of how you see it?
Yeah. I think one of the things about this weight class that's extremely intriguing, outside of the fact that it's like Gable Stevenson's back in wrestling.
Wearing Nikes, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
PS.com.
Yeah. But I think the amount of talent that we're seeing at the heavyweight weight class, especially here, like athletic ability is, I mean, I'd have to go back in time a little bit to see maybe a better heavyweight field in the top 8.
Yeah.
We would have to do some real nerd stuff in order to make our way back there.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah. And just imagine if we would have had Mason Paris for one more year.
Yep. And to be fair, flowers to GT. He picked Hendrickson to win it over Bastida. Mark had Bastida over Hendrickson. I had Trumbull over Feldman. I told you I wanted to just pick something different, and I actually got half of it right, at least making the finals. So, Marco, any thoughts on 285?
No, not really. I think Hendrickson wrestled really well. Bastida wasn't there. Still think if Bastida was healthy, I still think he's better. He proved it last year twice when he wrestled Hendrickson. But, I mean, Hendrickson's wrestling different. And it may not just be me, but does he look bigger this year?
He looks big as hell.
I mean, he looks filled out. Yeah. So, I don't know.
I think the training table at Oklahoma State is better than at the Air Force.
Must be, because he looked absolutely huge, and he still moves really, really well. So, but to break that barrier of the two guys ahead of him, that's still a whole different situation. I mean, Gable looks good. We're not wrestling for 2 years, basically. Not doing, other things.
It's one of the things I love you, but use the word good. Gable looks world class. Like Gable looks like he could go beat Zare.
So he's just so good. He's just so talented. And it's all free shots. I mean, he moves you around so much. You go one direction, and all of a sudden there's an opening for him, and he just runs right through you. It's just so impressive the way he moves.
Yeah. So the final results, Mark had Nebraska, Oklahoma State, Iowa State. GT had Oklahoma State, Virginia Tech, Ohio State. And I had Oklahoma State, Nebraska, Ohio State. So clearly the person that knows the most about wrestling is the one that picked the teams in order correctly. So flowers to me.
I had too many guys not show up. If they'd have showed up, we'd have been pretty good.
I like we. GT goes to we. I like that a lot. So,
Grant, don't you think we would have been better if our guys would have showed up?
Yeah, man.
That's right. I don't know where they were. They might have been playing craps for all I know.
Totally agree.
So here's what's interesting. Penn State 131.5. Iowa's at 87.5. And Oklahoma State's at 81.5. And I don't think you should take Teamer out, but if you take them out, they flip-flop. Minnesota's up to 4, boys, at 65.2. Nebraska 57, Virginia Tech 55, Ohio State 48, and change, Missouri 43.5. And then it's kind of a drop off to Northern Iowa, Iowa State, Cornell, and even West Virginia's there. So Lehigh's at 28.5. Feels like if they took a couple guys out of red shirt, they'd be pretty dang good too. So it'd be interesting if Arizona State, they only have 17.5, but if you just add Parco and Teamer, they literally jump up to the top 5. So, okay, interesting. Okay, let's say this. Pick your top 4 teams now.
Right now? As of today?
Yeah.
Penn State, Iowa, Oklahoma State. Then I have no idea. I'm still going to go with Iowa State. I'll go with Iowa State at 4.
Okay. GT?
Penn State, Iowa, Okie State, Minnesota.
I'm in the Minnesota. I kind of think Virginia Tech, man, because like they got a bunch of guys ranked. Here's the other thing. I didn't think Caleb Henson was going to win it. I now think Caleb Henson has a pretty good chance to win it. TJ Stewart's not ranked in the top 8. He's a guy that could get back in the top 8 and they could score more points than they're ranked. And Ventresca's right there. I mean, he could kill me if I pick them and go round to 12, or he could make the finals. So, I mean, I think that race for 4th gets really interesting, but it feels like Oklahoma State has really cemented themselves as the 3rd best team. And the Oklahoma State-Iowa duel is fascinating. Like, Mark, you and I did that when I was driving, and it's bonkers.
If everybody wrestles.
And I don't think there's any team that wins more than 2 in a row on paper. So it's going to go back and forth. So.
Well, no, I disagree with you there.
Okay,
I think Iowa wins 3 in a row, 49, 57, 65. If they got their guys in there.
Yeah, you're right. That's right.
So,
And then Oklahoma State comes back on the back end. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, real quickly, it feels like Spratley's favored, Ayala's favored. That's 1-1. Tegan Jameson's favored, Parco's favored. That's 2-2. Iowa wins the next 2. It's 4-2. 74. Hamidi 4-3. Plot 4-4. Buchanan 5-4. Wyatt 5-5.
interesting.
Yeah. So, all right. We'll talk about this next week, but Hall of Fame duels for us right around the corner. Just want to tell everybody very quickly, we've got another great field. The teams we have are Bishop McCourt, Del Barton, Stillwater, Edmond North, Massillon, Perry, Sunnyside, Green Farms, Joliet Catholic, Pontigansett, Arlington Martin. Everybody's in the top 50. So really good field. 2 days. We'll be on Willie's Rockfin channel. We'll probably dig into it a little more next week because there's not a ton of wrestling going on this weekend. Let me see. Let me look at the docket real quick, or the schedule. Bedlam is Friday. So that's worth checking out. And if you're a high school wrestling fan, Faith Christian duels Sem Friday night. And Faith Christian rolled through Ironman. So they're the new #1 team in America.
They're talented. I got some talent.
They're pretty good at wrestling. Yeah.
Pretty good.
Pretty good at wrestling. And young. I don't think they graduate hardly anybody. So I want to close by saying thanks to the Valiant Prep guys, Eric Larkin, Mike Douglas, Arizona State, Lee Pritz, and those guys for showing me some great hospitality while I was out there. It's great to be treated like family across the country. I'm not like GT where I get treated like family across the world. I'm working on my status there. GT's got it. I don't travel enough to have the awesome food of the day like Grant does. I certainly don't have the hair to pull that off, but I'm aspiring. I'm working on it. So.
And I would like to close by saying I found the shovel that I buried when I buried Minnesota, so now I can dig them back up. I wasn't sure where it was, but I did find it. So
that's one of the great.
I can start bringing them back.
They're back.
They're back.
Gable and McAnally. I mean, that's those your points. I mean, Gable's at 20, and McAnally's up to 26, 12 and a half, 32 points.
Yep.
So, all right. For Mark and Grant, I'm David. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. We will see you all next week.